right?
Honestly, even for something like Nova 4, I think there are degrees of health that are extracted out of it. I've written already about certain resistant starches. Most SAD diet people can't extract them out of food anymore. They don't have the ability to, whether it's because they're missing species in their gut or because their stomach is too messed up now, where they don't have the right acid, might have ulcers, they might have leaky gut, cannot possibly digest without pain at times some of the roughage in order to extract some of the resistant fibers or some of the unusual fibers that have to be broken down and processed. So when you look at the Nova 4 category, I think the Nova categories are actually not good. We talked about this in our previous meeting, because I think the science has to be applied in a way that is better identifiable to what it means to our metabolism or our bodies or our
Well,
digestion.
And
Carlos
you can
Montiero.
have a heavily processed food that is very healthy. I mean, I think of milk protein. You go the whole spectrum from milk to milk powder to milk protein concentrate, whey protein. So it's like, well, where do you draw the line? And for some people, well, maybe they need more protein, so the whey protein concentrate or isolate is better for them. Well, why should some arbitrary arbiter of processing dictate which of those types of milk are healthy or not?
It goes beyond that, because now we're getting into, the advanced science of epigenetics, methylated DNA chains and things. I just attended a webinar that was highlighting one of the newest of the companies that I've met, and they are brilliant how their approach is. And they told a story, a case study about a doctor who had a disease issue and could not find a remedy to solve it for himself, took one of the methylated DNA genetic tests rather than a traditional genetic test, found out he had a couple of missing markers and a nutrient from food that he absolutely needed in order to reduce some of his symptoms. So all he did was supplement this one item. Had he not done that, never would have found that. And that is an extremely processed, I think it was an amino acid that had to be severely processed and fine-tuned for him, right? So when you
Right.
start looking at something like that on an individual basis, yes, it's nice to have some sort of, I guess, guidelines or guide rails of a degree of processing, but we have to look at the science of the nutrition then and really
So
break it down.
And we can't be so ideological about processing when it's true that there are individual compounds we need, and you
let's
can't get B12 from, you have to synthesize
now B12 can be
B as well.
created by the microbiome, Blake. That's all
That's the other.
B1, 6, they all can be produced by the microbiome. It's in exceptionally limited quantity.
Yeah, they
Yes.
can be, but
But
you have all these other things to optimize.
just let's back up for a second about the NOVA classification system, just for the audience, so that they can understand. Of course, it was a thing for a time and a place by a researcher. So this is Carlos Montiero noticing the dramatic rise in obesity in Brazil. Like the dramatic rise of obesity in Brazil. It's unexplainable by most other factors. Realized that the invasion of ultra processed food, whatever that was at the time, which he said it's kind of non-traditional food, right? And he created a system around the idea of processing. This is the first big framework to give this classification that had any pull in the academic arena. Fast forward now 30 years, we have more fidelity in the science, we have more nuance, we have more precision medicine. So to your point, Blake, I think that that's a reasonable thing. Not all processing is bad, or Judy, but we have to understand the ethos of processing. Okay, this is really important because it is never the singular ingredient. It is the relationship of all ingredients to each other. We know this now. You can go the linear route. It's true. You have an iron deficiency, it's iron. But the question then becomes, where's the deficiency come from in the first place? And it's a whole cascade of things that goes down the line. So you can say, oh, you're missing bacteria. Why are you missing bacteria? You had early life antibiotic exposure in the first 2 years of life, eliminating keystone bacteria. So now the point is, like, what is the resolution of our intervention strategies? We do need whey protein. If someone's cachexic and they have a certain potential for muscle wasting, of course, this is a competent interventional strategy. But what we have to do is nuance our approach on how we make the food system support the general population of people, which might have special needs. That's called personalization, right? So we just need an empathetic and compassionate and competent approach to this, again, that puts profit in a different strata of understanding. If you have a sick population that you continue to profit off of, that nauseates me. Right? But if we can apply some solutions so that we can all be better, socially conscious capitalism is something I want to participate in because I think the corporations have the ability to do good.
Well, you're going back to
And
what you said, living systems. You have to make corporations a part of the living systems.
If only the food industry could have clear guidance on what is it that they should be making.
And the public's going to give them some of that guidance now, Blake. I think.
To me, number one, it's not processing. It's calorie content, portion size, use occasion, what else you eat it with. And so if we said, hey, we don't sell anything that's more than 200 calories per serving, suddenly, or you disincentivize somehow. So I think there has to be some cogent, understanding of the incentives, the market incentives and the controls that we want to put on.
And to your point, the market incentives or de-incentives has been a sugar tax in certain beverage categories in countries around the world. And there's verifiable data that it works. You're right. Yeah. It definitely does.
Exactly. And so you don't want to deprive
the public, I think it is a way that we can do it. But then in my opinion, and maybe this is my utopic thinking, I would love an informed public to just not choose it in the first place.
Okay.
The whole problem, the chink in all this armor is, look, who are the most vulnerable among us? People who are unhoused, who don't have money to even buy food in the first place. So if our theory of the world and how it should work doesn't account for them or try to help them, then whatever we're talking about is suburban.
And that's the social determinants of health.
And if it doesn't work for somebody in Africa as well, then does it work for somebody here in the U.S.? So we've come very myopic as far as like, well, what affects me or my family? But what about that starving person in Africa who needs that sugar in order to live?
Yeah. To your point. So to your point, I'll go directly to this. The Eat Health Lancet Planetary Health Diet calls for a reduction or elimination in dairy products. So I actually know the primary author of that. His name's Marco Springman. And we had a conversation with another Ugandan researcher about dairy. And Marco is very clear. He said there's no room for dairy production and cattle dairy production in the planetary health model. And so this researcher's name was Nikki. She worked with one of the top Dutch researchers, Remco Kort. If you go look him up, EMRCOKORT. He built the microbiome, the world's only and largest and most amazing microbiome museum in Holland. A phenomenal microbiologist, if you know the name. She worked under him in Uganda. And what did they do? They helped develop microeconomies around dairy production, but not just dairy, fermented dairy to make it portable. They could do it in a community. Then you'd have your local producers. And what did it guard against? Dysentery, right? So it was a geolocated, personalized solution that wasn't necessarily within the planetary health Eat Lancet. Because I'm a planetary health. That's my thing, right? So but it wasn't there. And I got a different understanding of why that is important strategy in that place at that time, because water potability is a major issue. Well, so there's the dot connection.
Yeah. And you could say the same thing for Wisconsin, all the dairy in Wisconsin. Well, what if there's less, what if demand goes down for milk? What do they do with that milk? Well, they have to dry it to make sure it's shelf stable. They can't put it in a freezer forever. So it's like you got all these things like evaporated condensed milk. Well, that came out.
What happened in New York though when in the dairy market?
Don't want Wisconsin dairy farmers either, or dairy farmers anywhere in the U.S. with our nutritional recommendation.
Well, plant-based diet and anti-dairy hurt the New York farmers.
Dairy suffers right now.
It suffered severely. It had to start culling cows. Yeah. That was a few years ago.
There is a little bit, let's be honest. I mean, U.S. dairy supply does exist in the overproduction capacity. The incentives from multiple influential grain crop plus dairy up plus cheese plus, and that's actually exportable dried products, is oversupplied in the U.S. dairy supply. So you have a big export market. So again, we need to talk about conscious capitalism. So that means that people that are boards and on directors of boards that are part of the administrative capacity need to shine the spotlight in other places to illuminate the interconnectedness so that we can understand how there's a ripple. This is the butterfly effect. We've heard about this. Butterfly flaps its wings. Someone makes a decision here, and it has an unintended but larger consequence. Said another way, in complexity science, initial future outcomes are highly sensitive to initial conditions, and small changes can have dramatic outcomes, right?
That are difficult to predict. And so
then difficult to redirect after that. So I think we're in a part right now where you have the engine of the food system running. Very encouraged by a conscious shift that I'm seeing amongst normal folks, whoever they are, and I mean that in a very positive way. Normal folks are saying, this isn't going to work anymore, and I am going to start to make other choices.